The blizzard had come out of nowhere, swallowing the mountain pass in a wall of white so thick that Sarah Fitzgerald couldn't see her own horse's ears. And now she lay buried beneath 3 feet of snow, her lungs burning for air she could barely draw, her fingers numb beyond feeling as consciousness slipped away like sand through frozen fingers. She had been traveling from California to Virginia City with her aunt's family when their wagon train decided to risk crossing the Sierra Nevada in late November of 1867. The scout had assured them they could make it through before the winter storms hit in earnest, but he had been wrong. Dead wrong. Sarah remembered the wind picking up suddenly, how the temperature had plummeted within minutes, how the snow had begun falling so hard and fast that it seemed like the sky itself was collapsing upon them. She remembered her aunt screaming for everyone to stay together, remembered the horses panicking, remembered being thrown from the wagon when it lurched sideways on the narrow mountain trail. Then she remembered falling, tumbling down an embankment, the world spinning in a chaos of white and gray and the terrible cold seeping into her bones. She had tried to climb back up, but the snow was coming down too hard, too fast. She had tried to call out, but the wind stole her voice. She had tried to find shelter, stumbling through drifts that came up to her waist, then her chest, and then she couldn't move any more. The snow had buried her, a suffocating blanket that pressed down from all sides. In those final moments before darkness claimed her, Sarah thought of her parents back in San Francisco, how they would never know what happened to their daughter. She thought of all the things she would never do, never see, never experience. She was only 22 years old, and this was how it would end, frozen in the mountains, alone and forgotten. But Sarah Fitzgerald did not know that fate had other plans. 3 hours after the snow buried her, a cowboy named Cole Easton was making his way down from his winter camp in the high country. He had spent the last 2 months working a remote line shack for one of the big ranches that ran cattle in the Sierra foothills, and he was heading to Genoa, Nevada to spend the rest of winter somewhere with walls that didn't leak and a bed that didn't have ice on the blankets in the morning. Cole was 30 years old, tall and lean with dark hair and gray eyes that had seen more than their share of hardship. He had been working as a cowboy since he was 15, drifting from ranch to ranch, never staying anywhere too long, never letting anyone get too close. The blizzard had caught him by surprise too, but Cole knew these mountains. He had found shelter in a small cave and waited out the worst of it, and now he was pushing through the aftermath, leading his buckskin horse through snow that came up to the animal's knees. He was following what he thought was the main trail when he saw something that made him stop cold, a piece of blue fabric, just a corner of it, sticking up through the snow. Cole's heart began to pound. He tied his horse to a nearby pine tree and waded through the drifts, falling to his knees beside that scrap of fabric. He began digging with his bare hands, throwing snow aside in great armfuls, his breath coming in white clouds. His fingers hit something solid and he dug faster, uncovering a shoulder, then a head, then a face so pale and still that he thought for certain she was dead. But when he pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt it. A pulse, faint and slow, but there. She was alive. Cole didn't waste time thinking. He dug her out completely, lifting her limp body from the snow drift. She was frozen stiff, her lips blue, her skin like ice. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't breathing right, just these shallow little gasps that barely moved her chest. He knew he had maybe minutes to warm her up, or she would die anyway. He carried her to his horse, holding her against his chest with one arm while he untied the reins with the other. The cave where he had sheltered was only about 100 yards back up the trail. Cole made it there in record time, half carrying and half dragging the woman, his horse following behind. Inside the cave, Cole had left his campfire still smoldering. He quickly built it back up, feeding it dry wood he had stacked against the back wall until flames were leaping high and bright. Then he turned his attention to the woman. Her clothes were soaked through and freezing. Cole knew from experience that he had to get them off her, or the wet fabric would keep stealing her body heat. He worked quickly and methodically, trying not to think about anything except keeping her alive. He stripped off her dress, her petticoats, everything down to her undergarments, and then he wrapped her in every dry blanket he had. He positioned her as close to the fire as he dared and began rubbing her arms and legs, trying to get her blood flowing again. For long minutes, nothing happened. She just lay there, pale and still, barely breathing. Cole felt panic rising in his chest. He had found her, dug her out, gotten her warm, but what if it wasn't enough? What if she died anyway? Then she gasped. A real breath, deep and shuddering, her eyelids fluttered. Cole leaned over her, his hands on her shoulders. "That's it," he said, his voice rough. "Come on, breathe. Stay with me." Her eyes opened. They were the color of amber, he noticed, a warm golden brown that seemed to catch the firelight. She stared up at him in confusion, her lips moving but no sound coming out. "Don't try to talk," Cole said. "You were buried in the snow. I dug you out. You're safe now, but you need to stay still and warm up." She blinked at him, and he saw awareness slowly returning to those amber eyes. Then she started shaking, violent tremors that rattled her whole body. Cole knew this was actually a good sign. It meant her body was trying to generate heat. He pulled the blankets tighter around her and added more wood to the fire. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep her conscious. Sarah," she managed through chattering teeth. "Sarah F. Fitzgerald. I'm Cole Easton. You're going to be all right, Sarah. Just stay awake for me." "My aunt," Sarah whispered. "The wagon train. They were right behind me. I fell. I have to find them." Cole's expression grew serious. The storm was bad, real bad. If they were caught in the open when it hit hardest, I don't know if they made it, but I'll look for them as soon as the weather clears. Right now, you need to focus on staying alive. Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. They have to be alive. "My aunt, my uncle, their children. Please, you have to find them." "I will," Cole promised. "But first light isn't for another few hours, and I can't leave you alone like this. You're still in danger. Can you drink something?" He had coffee in his pack, left over from that morning. It was cold now, but it was liquid. He helped Sarah sit up, keeping the blankets wrapped around her, and held the tin cup to her lips. She drank in small sips, coughing a little. "How long was I under there?" she asked. "I don't know. Hours, maybe. Your lips were blue when I found you." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. He had a strong face, weathered by sun and wind, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more than he frowned, though he wasn't smiling now. There was something steady about him, something solid and dependable. She realized he had saved her life. "Thank you," she said quietly. "If you hadn't found me, I would have died there." "Don't thank me yet," Cole said. "You're not out of danger. Sometimes people who get frozen like you did, they seem fine at first and then they take a turn for the worse. I'm going to keep you warm and keep you awake until morning. Then we'll see about finding your family and getting you somewhere with a real doctor." The shaking was gradually subsiding, though Sarah still felt cold deep in her bones, a cold that seemed like it would never leave. Cole kept the fire blazing and stayed close beside her, monitoring her breathing, making sure she didn't slip back into unconsciousness. He talked to keep her alert, asking her questions about where she was from, where she was going, what had happened to separate her from the wagon train. Sarah told him about her life in San Francisco, how her father was a merchant and her mother taught piano lessons. She had been visiting her aunt's family in Sacramento, when they decided to relocate to Virginia City, where her uncle had found work in the silver mines. Sarah had agreed to travel with them as far as Virginia City, then planned to continue on to visit other relatives in Carson City before eventually returning home. The journey was supposed to take 2 weeks. They had been on the road for 9 days when the blizzard hit. "I was riding in the back of the wagon with my cousins," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger as warmth returned to her body. "The wind was so fierce it was rocking us back and forth. Then we hit something, a rock I think, and the wheel broke. The wagon tipped and I was thrown out. I tried to grab onto something, but there was nothing but snow and wind. I fell down the slope, and when I tried to climb back up, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell which way was up. I just kept walking, hoping I would find them, but the snow kept getting deeper." Her voice broke and fresh tears came. Cole reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "You did the best you could," he said. "Nobody can do more than that, and you survived. That takes strength." Sarah looked down at their joined hands. His was so much larger than hers, roughened by work and weather, yet his touch was careful, almost tender. She felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "Where were you when the storm hit?" she asked. "Up at a line shack about 5 miles from here." "I'm a cowboy. Work for the Triple Bar Ranch during the warm months. In winter, somebody has to stay up in the high country to keep an eye on the stock that didn't get rounded up in the fall gather. It's lonely work, but it pays steady, and I don't mind my own company." "You saved my life," Sarah said again. "That's more than just not minding your own company. You could have missed me completely. That little bit of my dress showing through the snow, you could have ridden right past." "But I didn't," Cole said simply, "and I'm glad I didn't." Their eyes met and held. Sarah felt her breath catch. There was something in his gaze, something intense and genuine that made her heart beat faster. She had known this man for only a few hours, and for most of that time she had been barely conscious, yet she felt connected to him in a way she couldn't explain. He had brought her back from the edge of death. He had held her life in his hands and refused to let go. Cole felt it too, that pull, that spark of recognition. He had spent most of his adult life alone by choice, keeping people at a distance, because it was easier than risking the pain of losing them. But looking into Sarah's amber eyes, feeling her hand in his, he felt something crack open inside him, something he had thought was sealed shut forever. He cleared his throat and looked away, suddenly uncomfortable with the intensity of his own feelings. "You should try to sleep if you can. I'll keep the fire going and wake you every hour or so to make sure you're all right." "I don't think I can sleep," Sarah admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back under the snow, suffocating." "Then we'll stay awake together," Cole said. "Tell me more about San Francisco." "I've never been to a big city." So Sarah talked, describing the steep hills and the bay with its ships from all over the world, the markets and theaters and restaurants, the fog that rolled in every evening like a living thing. Cole listened, fascinated by this world so different from his own. He told her about life on the range, the long days in the saddle, the beauty of dawn breaking over the mountains, the satisfaction of honest work done well. They talked through the night, their words weaving a connection between them that grew stronger with each passing hour. When dawn finally came, pale and cold through the cave entrance, Cole went outside to assess the situation. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape transformed into pristine white. The sky was clear now, a hard bright blue that hurt to look at. Cole climbed to a high point where he could see down into the valley. He scanned the terrain with experienced eyes, looking for any sign of the wagon train. He saw it about 2 miles to the east. 3 wagons, tipped on their sides, half buried in drifts. He saw no movement, no smoke from fires, no signs of life. His heart sank. He went back to the cave where Sarah was sitting up, wrapped in blankets, her color much better than it had been during the night. "I can see the wagons," he told her gently. "But Sarah, I need to prepare you. It doesn't look good. There's no smoke, no movement. It's possible they found shelter elsewhere, but we need to be ready for the worst." Sarah's face went pale again. "I have to go there. I have to see." "You're not strong enough yet to walk that far through this snow. Then help me, please." "I have to know." Cole understood. Not knowing would eat at her worse than any terrible truth. He helped her into her dress, which he had dried by the fire during the night. It was wrinkled and damaged, but it was wearable. He gave her his spare coat, which hung huge on her smaller frame, and his extra pair of gloves. Then he saddled his horse and helped Sarah mount, climbing up behind her. She leaned back against his chest as he guided the horse down the mountain toward the overturned wagons. It took almost an hour to reach them. With every step, Sarah's dread grew. When they were close enough to see clearly, Cole felt her entire body go rigid. "No," she whispered. "Oh God, no." They found 5 bodies, Sarah's aunt and uncle and 3 other adults who had been traveling with them. They had frozen to death, huddled together trying to stay warm. Sarah's cousins, however, were not among the dead. Cole searched the area thoroughly and found tracks leading away from the wagons, heading east toward the valley. "Look here," he called to Sarah, who was kneeling in the snow beside her aunt's body, sobbing. "Small footprints. Children. They left the wagons, probably trying to find help. The tracks are from yesterday before the snow got deep. They might have made it to Genoa." Sarah looked up, hope and grief warring in her expression. "Genoa, how far is that?" "About 8 miles from here. It's possible they made it. Kids can be tougher than we think." Sarah stood up, wiping her tears. "We have to go there. We have to find out if they survived. We will. But first, we need to do right by your family. I can't dig graves in this frozen ground, but I can mark the location, and we can report it to the authorities in Genoa. They'll send someone to recover the bodies when the snow melts." Cole fashioned markers from pieces of the broken wagons, standing them upright in the snow so the site could be found again. Sarah said a prayer over her aunt and uncle, her voice breaking with emotion. Cole stood beside her, his hat in his hands, his presence a solid comfort. Then they mounted his horse again and turned toward Genoa. The ride down the mountain took most of the day. The snow was deep and the going was slow, but Cole knew the trails and his horse was strong and sure-footed. Sarah was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and she dozed against Cole's chest as they rode, waking occasionally to ask where they were. Cole found himself hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched. The weight of her against him, the scent of her hair, the trust she showed in falling asleep in his arms. He had carried injured cattle and delivered breech calves and wrestled steers to the ground for branding, but he had never held a woman like this, with such care and such longing. It scared him, how much he already cared about her. How the thought of saying goodbye when they reached Genoa made his chest ache. It was nearly dark when they finally rode into town. Genoa was small but bustling, one of the oldest settlements in Nevada, situated in a green valley with hot springs and tall cottonwood trees. Even in winter, even under its blanket of snow, it had a welcoming quality. Cole rode straight to the hotel, which also served as the town's main gathering place. Inside, it was warm and bright with lamplight. The proprietor, a stout woman named Mrs. Henderson, took one look at Sarah's pale face and exhausted appearance and immediately took charge. "Poor lamb, you look half frozen. Come with me, dear. We'll get you into a hot bath and a warm bed. Are you hurt? Should I send for the doctor?" Sarah explained about the wagon train, the blizzard, her aunt and uncle's deaths. She asked desperately about her cousins. Mrs. Henderson's face lit up. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They made it here yesterday afternoon, half frozen themselves but alive. They told us about being separated from the wagons, but they didn't know names of any adults with them. We've been housing them here, waiting to see if anyone else from their party survived. Sarah's knees buckled with relief. Cole caught her, his arm around her waist. Mrs. Henderson noticed the way he held her, the protective gentleness in his touch, and her eyebrows rose with interest. "The children are sleeping upstairs," Mrs. Henderson said. "You can see them in the morning. Right now you need rest. And you, young man, you look like you could use a meal and a bed yourself." "I'll see to my horse first," Cole said. "Then I'll come back for that meal." He was reluctant to let Sarah go, but she needed care he couldn't provide. Sarah seemed equally reluctant to leave him. She turned in the circle of his arm and looked up at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything, for saving my life, for helping me find my family, for being exactly who I needed when I needed someone most." Cole felt his throat tighten. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. Will you be here in the morning? I want to talk to you. Please don't leave without saying goodbye." "I won't," Cole promised, though part of him thought maybe it would be easier if he did. Easier to ride away now before this thing between them grew any stronger, before the inevitable goodbye hurt even more. But he had never been one to take the easy path. And when Sarah stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, a soft brush of her lips against his weathered skin, he knew he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Mrs. Henderson ushered Sarah away, chattering about hot water and clean clothes. Cole stood in the hotel lobby for a long moment, his hand pressed to his cheek where she had kissed him, feeling like the world had just shifted on its axis. He took care of his horse, settling the animal in the livery stable with hay and grain and a good rub-down. Then he returned to the hotel where Mrs. Henderson fed him beef stew and fresh bread and strong coffee. He told her the whole story, about finding Sarah buried in the snow, about the bodies at the wagon site. Mrs. Henderson listened with appropriate expressions of horror and sympathy, and when he was done, she patted his hand. "You're a good man, Cole Easton. That girl owes you her life. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "Not anyone. Plenty of men would have ridden right past that little scrap of fabric. Plenty wouldn't have worked so hard to warm her back up. Plenty wouldn't have stayed with her all night to make sure she didn't take a turn for the worse. You did all that, and you brought her here safely. That's not just anyone. That's someone special." Cole felt uncomfortable with the praise. He changed the subject, asking about rooms available. Mrs. Henderson set him up in a small room on the first floor, and Cole fell into bed exhausted. But despite his weariness, sleep was slow to come. He kept thinking about Sarah, wondering if she was all right, if she was sleeping or if she was lying awake thinking about her lost family. He wanted to go to her to make sure she was comfortable, to see her face one more time. He told himself he was being ridiculous. He had known her for barely a day. This feeling couldn't be real. It was just the intensity of the situation, the life and death drama that had thrown them together. Once things settled down, once she was safely reunited with her cousins and making plans to continue her journey, these feelings would fade. But even as he thought it, he didn't believe it. The next morning, Cole woke early out of long habit. He washed and shaved and dressed in his cleanest clothes, which weren't very clean, and went downstairs to find Mrs. Henderson serving breakfast. Sarah was already there, sitting at a table with 3 children clustered around her. She looked better this morning, color in her cheeks and life in her eyes, though he could see the grief there too. When she saw him, her face brightened. "Cole, come meet my cousins. This is James, he's 12. And Thomas, he's 10. And this is little Lily, she's 7. The children looked at him with wide eyes. James, the oldest, stood up and offered his hand. "Sir, Aunt Sarah told us you saved her life. Thank you. Thank you so much." Cole shook the boy's hand, moved by the solemn gratitude in his voice. "I'm glad I found her." "She said our parents died in the storm," James continued, his voice wavering. "Is that true?" Cole looked at Sarah, who nodded. He sat down at the table, meeting James's eyes directly. "Yes, I'm real sorry, son. They froze to death. They wouldn't have suffered. It happens quick and cold like that. Your aunt and I found them yesterday. The town will send someone to bring them back for a proper burial." Thomas started crying. Little Lily just stared at Cole with huge eyes that seemed too old for her young face. Sarah gathered them close, and Cole felt his heart break watching this family try to process their tragedy. Mrs. Henderson brought food, and they ate in quiet sadness. Afterward, Sarah asked Cole to take a walk with her. They bundled up and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The sun was shining, making the snow sparkle like diamonds. "I need to send a telegram to my parents," Sarah said as they walked. "Let them know I'm alive and tell them about my aunt and uncle. Then I need to figure out what to do about the children. Their father has a brother in Virginia City, but I don't know if he's still there or if he'd be willing to take them in. If not, they'll have to come back to San Francisco with me." "That's a lot to take on," Cole observed. "Their family. What else would I do?" Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. "Cole, I don't know how to say this properly, so I'm just going to say it plain. I know we barely know each other. I know the circumstances of how we met were unusual, but I feel something when I'm with you, something I've never felt before. I don't want to say goodbye to you." Cole's heart started pounding. "Sarah, let me finish. I'm not asking you for promises or commitments. I just want to know if you feel it too, this connection between us. Tell me I'm not imagining it." Cole looked at her, this brave, beautiful woman who had come so close to death, and was still standing, still fighting for her family, still finding room in her heart to care about a cowboy who had happened to dig her out of the snow. He thought about lying, about telling her she was imagining things, that it was just gratitude and shock making her feel this way, but he had never been good at lying. "You're not imagining it," he said quietly. "I feel it too. Have since the moment you opened your eyes in that cave and looked at me. But Sarah, I'm just a cowboy. I drift from place to place, working where the work is. I don't have a home or savings or anything to offer a woman like you." "A woman like me," Sarah repeated. "What does that mean?" "Educated. From a good family. Used to nice things and city life. What would you want with someone like me?" Sarah stepped closer, looking up at him with those amber eyes that seemed to see right through him. "I want someone brave and kind and steady, someone who doesn't give up when things get hard. Someone who values life enough to dig a stranger out of the snow and sit up all night making sure she stays alive. That's what I want, Cole. That's who you are." Cole felt something crack open inside him, something he had kept locked away for so long he had forgotten it was there. Hope. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "If I kiss you," he said softly, "I'm not going to want to let you go." "Then kiss me," Sarah whispered, "and don't let go." He kissed her there in the snow-covered street of Genoa, Nevada. A kiss that started gentle and grew deeper, more passionate. Sarah's arms wrapped around his neck and she pressed close to him. And Cole forgot about everything except the taste of her lips and the warmth of her body, and the feeling that he had finally found something worth holding on to. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "You need to get those children somewhere safe. You need to get back to your life." "Come with me," Sarah said. Come to Virginia City while I sort things out with the children's uncle. Stay with me a while longer. Let's see where this goes." Cole wanted to say yes immediately, but years of caution held him back. "I don't know anything about city life. I'd be useless there." "You wouldn't be useless to me," Sarah said firmly. "Besides, Virginia City isn't San Francisco. It's a mining town rough around the edges. You'd fit in fine. Please, Cole, give us a chance." He looked into her eyes and saw everything he had ever wanted looking back at him. He thought about his empty life, drifting from place to place with no ties and no purpose beyond the next job. He thought about how it had felt to hold her, to care about whether she lived or died, to feel something beyond simple survival for the first time in years. "All right," he said. "I'll come with you to Virginia City. But Sarah, if your parents or the children's uncle or anyone else thinks I'm not good enough for you, I won't argue. I won't make things harder for you. The only person who gets to decide if you're good enough for me is me," Sarah said. "And I've already decided." They walked back to the hotel hand in hand, and Cole felt lighter than he had in years. Mrs. Henderson took one look at them and smiled knowingly. Over the next few days, arrangements were made. A recovery party was sent to bring back the bodies from the mountain pass. A proper funeral was held, and Sarah and the children wept together while Cole stood beside them, a steady presence. Telegrams were sent and received. Sarah's parents responded with relief and joy that their daughter was alive, and grief for her aunt and uncle. The children's uncle in Virginia City sent word that he would be honored to take in his brother's children. When everything was settled, Cole bought seats on the stage coach to Virginia City for himself, Sarah, and the 3 children. It was a 2-day journey through beautiful country, following the Carson River through valleys and canyons. The children were subdued, processing their grief, but Sarah talked to them gently, keeping their spirits up as best she could. Cole helped where he could, telling them stories about life on the range, teaching Thomas how to tie proper knots, letting little Lily wear his hat. James, the oldest, attached himself to Cole like a shadow. The boy was trying to be strong, trying to be the man of the family now, and Cole recognized that burden. He took James aside one evening when they stopped at a way station. "You don't have to carry everything yourself," Cole told him. "Being strong doesn't mean not feeling sad. Your parents died. That's about the worst thing that can happen. You're allowed to grieve." "But Thomas and Lily need me to be strong," James said, his voice tight. "I'm the oldest. I have to take care of them." "You can take care of them and still feel your feelings," Cole said. "In fact, showing them it's okay to be sad might help them more than pretending everything's fine. And you're not alone. You have your Aunt Sarah and your uncle in Virginia City. You have people who love you." James's face crumpled and he started to cry, really cry, for the first time since learning of his parents' deaths. Cole pulled the boy into a hug and let him sob against his shoulder, offering the silent comfort of presence and understanding. When James finally pulled away, red-eyed and exhausted, he looked at Cole with something like worship. "I wish you were my uncle," he said, "or my big brother or something. You're easy to talk to." Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I'm your friend, that's something." "Will you stay in Virginia City? Will we see you again after we go to Uncle Robert's house?" "I don't know what the future holds," Cole said honestly, "but I promise I won't disappear without saying goodbye." Sarah watched this exchange from across the room, her heart full. She was falling in love with Cole Easton, deeply and truly. It wasn't just gratitude or the drama of how they met. It was who he was, the kindness and strength he showed in every interaction, the way he treated her cousins with respect and compassion, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. That night, as they lay in their separate rooms at the way station, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Cole, about the future, about what she wanted her life to look like. She had always assumed she would return to San Francisco eventually, marry someone suitable, live the life her parents had planned for her. But now, having glimpsed something different, someone different, that future felt empty and small. She wanted adventure. She wanted passion. She wanted Cole. They arrived in Virginia City on a cold December afternoon. The town was everything Cole had heard and nothing like he expected. It clung to the side of a mountain, a chaotic jumble of buildings and people and noise. The silver mines operated day and night, and the wealth they produced had turned Virginia City into one of the most important towns in the West. But beneath the glamour was roughness, a frontier edge that reminded Cole of cattle towns he had known. The children's uncle, Robert Fletcher, met them at the stage depot. He was a tall man in his 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. He swept his nieces and nephews into his arms, weeping openly at seeing them alive while mourning his brother's death. He thanked Sarah profusely for bringing them safely to him, and he shook Cole's hand with genuine gratitude when Sarah explained how Cole had saved her life. "You'll stay with us, of course," Robert said to Sarah. "Both of you. I have a large house and plenty of room." "I don't want to impose," Cole started, but Robert waved him off. "Nonsense. Any friend of Sarah's is welcome in my home. Besides, I want to hear the whole story of what happened up on that mountain." Robert's house was indeed large, a beautiful Victorian with gingerbread trim and a view of the valley below. His wife, Martha, was a plump, cheerful woman who immediately took charge of settling the children and making everyone comfortable. That evening, over a dinner of roast chicken and vegetables, Cole and Sarah told the full story of the blizzard, the rescue, and the journey to Genoa. Martha cried during the sad parts and smiled during the parts where Cole described Sarah's bravery. Robert listened intently, asking questions about the location of the wagon wreck and the condition of the trail. When the story was finished, he raised his glass. "To Cole Easton, who saved our Sarah and gave these children hope, and to Sarah, for her courage and love for her family. We are blessed to have you both here." They all drank, and Cole felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. This was what family felt like, he realized. This sense of belonging, of being welcomed and valued. He had been without it for so long he had forgotten what he was missing. After dinner, Sarah asked Cole to take a walk with her. They bundled up and stepped out into the cold night. Virginia City was still bustling despite the late hour. Saloons and gambling halls lit up bright, music and laughter spilling into the streets. Cole walked close beside Sarah, ready to defend her if any of the rough characters got too close, but no one bothered them. "What do you think of the town?" Sarah asked. "It's bigger than I expected, louder, but not as fancy as I feared. I think I could get used to it." Sarah smiled. "Does that mean you're thinking about staying?" Cole stopped walking and turned to face her. "Sarah, I need to be honest with you. I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone, but I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. I'm a working man. I'd need to find a job, something to do with my hands and my skills. I can't just live on your family's generosity. What if I helped you find work? Robert knows everyone in town. I'm sure he could introduce you to people who need a good man. And what would we be to each other?" Cole asked quietly. "I'm not a man who does things halfway, Sarah. If I stay here, if I build a life in this town, it'll be because I'm building it with you, not beside you, with you. As your husband, if you'll have me." Sarah's breath caught. "Cole, are you asking me to marry you?" "I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other a handful of days, but I also know that what I feel for you is real and true and not going away. So yes, I'm asking. Not right this minute, but someday soon when you're ready. Will you marry me, Sarah Fitzgerald?" Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you, and it's not too soon. When you know, you know. I knew when I opened my eyes in that cave and saw you looking at me like my life mattered more than anything in the world. I knew then, and I know now. Yes, Cole, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring all his feelings into that kiss. Sarah kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms around his neck, her body pressed against his. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. "We should probably tell your family," Cole said. "And your parents. This is going to be a shock to everyone." "Let them be shocked," Sarah said happily. "Love doesn't follow a schedule or society's rules. It just is, and this is." They walked back to the house hand in hand, and when they told Robert and Martha their news, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then Martha squealed with delight and hugged them both, and Robert shook Cole's hand with a grin. "I had a feeling," Robert said. "The way you two look at each other, it's obvious. But are you sure, Sarah? This is very fast." "I'm sure," Sarah said firmly. "More sure than I've ever been about anything." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Sarah sent a telegram to her parents explaining the engagement, and while their response was cautious, they trusted their daughter's judgment enough not to object. Robert introduced Cole to the owner of a large freight company that hauled supplies between Virginia City and Carson City, and points beyond. The owner, a gruff man named Tom Sullivan, was impressed by Cole's knowledge of horses and trails and hired him on the spot as a wagon driver and route supervisor. Cole threw himself into the work, proving himself reliable and skilled. He saved his pay carefully, planning for the future. In his spare time, he courted Sarah properly, taking her to dinner, walking with her through town, sitting with her in the parlor in the evenings while she read and he whittled small wooden toys for Lily and the boys. The children were thriving in their uncle's care, slowly healing from their grief. They adored Cole, and he adored them right back. James continued to shadow him whenever possible, soaking up advice and attention. Thomas taught Cole a complicated card game he had learned. Little Lily made Cole a drawing of him on his horse, which he treasured. Sarah watched Cole integrate himself into this makeshift family and fell more in love with him every day. He was patient with the children, respectful to Robert and Martha, hardworking at his job and tender with her in moments they stole alone. He was everything she had ever wanted and things she hadn't known to want. In February, 3 months after Cole had dug Sarah out of the snow, they were married in a simple ceremony at the church in Virginia City. Sarah wore a dress of ivory silk that Martha helped her make, and Cole wore a new suit that Robert insisted on buying him. The children stood up with them as witnesses, along with Robert and Martha. Sarah's parents sent a telegram with their blessing and a promise to visit soon. The ceremony was short and sweet. When the minister said Cole could kiss his bride, Cole took Sarah's face in his hands and kissed her with all the love and promise in his heart. Sarah kissed him back, feeling complete for the first time in her life. They had a small reception at Robert's house, with cake and champagne and toasts. Then Cole took Sarah to the small house he had rented on the edge of town, a modest place with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and a view of the mountains. It wasn't much, but Cole had furnished it carefully, choosing everything with Sarah's comfort in mind. "It's perfect," Sarah said, looking around with shining eyes. "It's ours. It's ours," Cole agreed. He picked her up and carried her over the threshold, and Sarah laughed, her arms around his neck. That night, in the privacy of their marriage bed, they came together with passion and tenderness, learning each other's bodies, celebrating their union. Cole was gentle and attentive, making sure Sarah felt cherished and desired. Sarah responded with her own passion, showing him without words how much she loved him, how right this was. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the quilts, talking quietly. Cole traced patterns on Sarah's bare shoulder, marveling at the fact that she was his wife, that this was his life now. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Sarah said. "Are you?" "So happy it scares me sometimes," Cole admitted. "I keep thinking something will go wrong, that I'll wake up and this will all have been a dream." Sarah propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him seriously. "This is real, Cole. We're real. And we're going to build a beautiful life together. I promise you that." "I believe you," Cole said, pulling her down for a kiss. The first year of their marriage was everything they had hoped. Cole excelled at his job and was promoted to managing the entire freight operation. Sarah kept their home and became involved in the community, teaching reading to children whose parents worked in the mines. They visited Robert and Martha regularly, watching the children continue to heal and grow. James announced he wanted to be a teamster like Cole when he grew up. Thomas discovered a talent for drawing and spent hours sketching the mountains and buildings. Little Lily started school and loved every minute of it. Sarah's parents finally visited in the spring, traveling from San Francisco to meet their son-in-law. Sarah was nervous about the meeting, worried they wouldn't approve of Cole, but her fears proved groundless. Her father, a shrewd judge of character, saw immediately that Cole was a good man who loved his daughter. Her mother was charmed by Cole's quiet manners and obvious devotion to Sarah. By the end of their week-long visit, both parents gave their wholehearted blessing to the marriage. In September of 1868, Sarah discovered she was expecting their first child. She told Cole one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. Cole went very still, then pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "A baby," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Sarah asked, though she could feel the answer in the way he held her. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Cole said. Terrified, excited, grateful, amazed, all of it at once. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Cole was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worried about Sarah overdoing things. Sarah found his concern endearing even when it was excessive. She continued teaching until she was too large to move around easily, then spent her days preparing the nursery and sewing baby clothes. In May of 1869, Sarah went into labor. Cole sent for the midwife, and then proceeded to pace the floor wearing grooves in the wood, until Robert showed up to keep him company and calm him down. The labor was long but uncomplicated, and when the midwife finally called Cole into the bedroom, he found Sarah exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "Cole, meet your son," Sarah said softly. Cole approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe, and looked down at the tiny face peeking out of the blanket. His son. His son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was making little snuffling sounds. As Cole watched, the baby opened his eyes and Cole fell instantly, completely in love. "He's perfect," Cole whispered. "Sarah, he's perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on anything. Now, looking at her husband holding their child with such wonder and tenderness, Sarah knew exactly what the name should be. "I want to name him after you," she said. "Cole Jr." Cole looked up at her, tears in his eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. He's part of both of us, but he has your strength. I can already see it." So Cole Jr. it was, though they quickly started calling him CJ to avoid confusion. The baby thrived, growing chubby and happy. Cole was a devoted father, getting up for midnight feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just holding his son and marveling at the miracle of him. Sarah watched her husband with their child and fell in love with him all over again. The children, now young teenagers, adored their new cousin. James, now 14, was surprisingly good with the baby, patient and gentle. Thomas liked to draw pictures of CJ. Lily, now 9, insisted on helping Sarah with everything baby-related, taking her role as big cousin very seriously. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Cole continued to do well at his job, eventually becoming a partner in the freight company. Sarah returned to teaching part-time once CJ was old enough. They bought a larger house with room for their growing family. In 1871, Sarah gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Stella. 2 years after that, another son arrived whom they named Samuel. Cole often thought back to that day he had found Sarah buried in the snow. It seemed like a lifetime ago, yet the memory was still vivid. Sometimes he woke in the night in a cold sweat, dreaming that he had ridden past that scrap of blue fabric, that he had never found her. Then he would reach out and feel Sarah warm and alive beside him, and the fear would fade. One evening, sitting on their porch watching their 3 children play in the yard while the sun set behind the mountains, Sarah took Cole's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your old life, settling down here with me?" Cole looked at her in genuine surprise. "Regret it? Sarah, you gave me a life. Before I found you, I was just existing, drifting from place to place with no real purpose. Now I have everything. A wife I love more than my own life, 3 beautiful children, a home, a job I'm proud of, friends, family. How could I regret any of that?" "I just wanted to make sure," Sarah said, leaning her head on his shoulder, "because I never want you to feel trapped or like you gave up too much." "The only thing I gave up was loneliness," Cole said firmly, "and I'm glad to be rid of it. Sarah, you are my home, you always will be. From the moment I pulled you out of that snow, you've been the center of my world. That's never going to change." Sarah smiled, that beautiful smile that still made his heart skip a beat after all these years. "I love you, Cole Easton." "I love you too, Sarah Easton, more than words can say." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their children play, and Cole felt a profound sense of peace. He had been a cowboy, a drifter, a man with no ties and no dreams beyond the next paycheck. But fate had led him down that mountain pass on that snowy day, had guided him to that scrap of blue fabric, had given him the chance to save a life and in doing so, save his own. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. CJ grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and learning. Stella was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and racing her brothers. Samuel was the peacemaker, gentle and kind. Cole taught all 3 of them to ride, to appreciate the mountains, to work hard and be honest. Sarah taught them to read and write and think critically, to be compassionate and fair. James eventually married and started his own freight business with Cole's help. Thomas became a successful artist whose paintings of Nevada landscapes hung in galleries in San Francisco. Lily trained as a teacher like Sarah and opened a school for minors' children. Robert and Martha remained close friends and devoted grandparents to all the children, blood related or not. Sarah's parents became regular visitors, thoroughly won over by Cole and delighted by their grandchildren. Her father eventually retired and moved to Virginia City to be closer to family, and he and Cole developed a deep friendship, spending hours discussing business and politics and the future. The freight company continued to grow and prosper. Cole was known throughout the region as a fair employer and a skilled businessman, but he never forgot his cowboy roots. He still rode out on the routes sometimes, checking conditions and talking to his drivers. He still felt most at home in the saddle, under the wide Nevada sky. Sarah's teaching expanded into a full-fledged school that served dozens of children. She was beloved by her students and respected by the community. She used her position to advocate for better conditions for miners' families, for safer working conditions in the mines, for education opportunities for children regardless of their parents' ability to pay. Cole supported all her efforts, proud of the difference she was making. In 1880, on their 12th wedding anniversary, Cole took Sarah back to Genoa. They visited the hotel where they had stayed, though Mrs. Henderson had long since passed away. They rode up into the mountains, following the trail Cole had taken that day. The site where the wagons had overturned was barely recognizable now, overgrown with brush and trees. But they found the markers Cole had made, weathered but still standing. Sarah stood there for a long moment, remembering her aunt and uncle, remembering the terror of being buried in the snow, remembering the moment she had opened her eyes to see Cole's face above her. "I think about how close I came to dying," she said quietly. "How if you had been an hour later, or if the snow had buried me deeper, or if you had missed seeing that little piece of my dress, everything would be different. CJ and Stella and Samuel wouldn't exist. All the life we've built together, all the happiness we've shared, it all hinged on that one moment. It's almost too much to comprehend." Cole put his arm around her shoulders. "I think about it too, but I don't think it was just luck or chance. I think we were meant to find each other. Maybe not in the way it happened, but somehow, we were meant to be together." "I believe that too," Sarah said, leaning into him. "Everything I've been through, everything that brought me to this mountain on that day, it was all leading me to you, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it." They stood together as the sun set over the Sierra Nevada, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful and lasting. Then they rode back down the mountain to their family, their home, their life. The children grew into adults who made their parents proud. CJ became a lawyer who fought for mining reform and workers' rights. Stella married a rancher and had 5 children of her own, all as wild and wonderful as she had been. Samuel became a doctor, dedicating himself to caring for the miners and their families. All 3 remained close to their parents and to each other, the bonds forged in childhood remaining strong throughout their lives. Cole and Sarah grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They celebrated 25 years of marriage surrounded by children and grandchildren, by friends and family who had become part of their story. They celebrated 30 years, then 35, then 40. Cole's hair turned silver, and lines deepened around his eyes, but Sarah still saw the man who had saved her life when she looked at him. Sarah's amber eyes remained bright, and her spirit remained strong, and Cole still felt his heart skip a beat every time she smiled at him. In 1908, at the age of 71, Cole fell ill. It started as a cough that wouldn't go away, then progressed to difficulty breathing. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and did what he could, but Cole's body was tired. He had lived a full, rich life, and now it was coming to an end. Sarah never left his side. She held his hand and talked to him about all their years together, about the children and grandchildren, about the day he had pulled her from the snow and changed both their lives forever. Their children came to say goodbye, bringing their own children so Cole could see the legacy he was leaving behind. On a cool October evening, with Sarah's hand in his and his family gathered around, Cole Easton took his last breath. He went peacefully, a slight smile on his weathered face, surrounded by the people he loved most. Sarah grieved deeply, but not bitterly. She had been given 40 years with the man she loved, had built a life and a family with him, had known a happiness she once thought impossible. She missed him every day, but she was grateful for every moment they had shared. She lived another 8 years, remaining active in the community, teaching when she could, spending time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She told them stories about their grandfather, about his strength and kindness, about the day he had saved her life and given her a future worth living. In 1916, at the age of 71, Sarah Fitzgerald Easton passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her children buried her beside Cole in the cemetery overlooking Virginia City, the mountains they had both loved rising in the distance. On her headstone, below her name and dates, her children had inscribed a simple line. She was buried under snow for hours. The cowboy dug her out and warmed her back to life. They loved each other forever, and they did. Through every challenge and joy, through raising children and building businesses, through the ordinary moments and the extraordinary ones, Cole and Sarah loved each other with a depth and constancy that inspired everyone who knew them. Their love story began in the most dramatic way possible, with life and death hanging in the balance, but it endured through the quiet, steady devotion of two people who chose each other every single day. Their descendants still tell the story, passing it down through generations. They tell about the blizzard in the Sierra Nevada in November of 1867, about the young woman buried in the snow and the cowboy who refused to ride past that scrap of blue fabric. They tell about the life that grew from that moment, about the love that transformed two lonely people into a family, about the legacy that continues to this day. Because some love stories begin with a glance across a crowded room, or a chance meeting on a street corner, or a carefully arranged introduction. But some love stories begin with snow and cold and the fierce determination of one person to save another. And those stories, the ones born from crisis and sealed by devotion, those stories last forever. Cole and Sarah's 3 children each had families of their own, filling Virginia City, and the surrounding area with Eastons who carried forward their grandparents' values of hard work, compassion, and devotion to family. The freight company Cole had helped build continued to operate well into the 20th century, eventually becoming one of the largest transportation operations in Nevada. The school Sarah founded grew and expanded, educating thousands of children over the decades. But more than businesses or buildings, Cole and Sarah's true legacy was the love they had modeled for their family. Their children and grandchildren learned from them that real love isn't just passion and romance, though theirs had plenty of both. Real love is choosing to stay, choosing to work through difficulties, choosing to build something together that's stronger than what either person could build alone. It's digging someone out of the snow and refusing to let go. It's looking at someone and seeing home. James Fletcher, Sarah's cousin who had lost his parents in that terrible blizzard, grew up to name his first son Cole in honor of the man who had been like a father to him. Thomas Fletcher included the story of the rescue in a series of paintings about Nevada history that toured museums across the country. Lily Fletcher taught her students about resilience and hope by telling them about her Aunt Sarah and the cowboy who saved her. The little house where Cole and Sarah had lived as newlyweds still stood a century later, carefully preserved by the family as a reminder of where it all began. Young Eastons would visit it on their birthdays or before their own weddings, touching the walls and walking the floors where their great-great-grandparents had started their life together, drawing strength and inspiration from that enduring love. On winter nights, when snow fell on the Sierra Nevada and blanketed the mountain passes in white, the family would gather and someone would inevitably say, "Tell us about the blizzard." And whoever was oldest or had heard it most would tell the story again, About Sarah buried in the snow and Cole refusing to give up. About the cave and the fire and the long night of keeping watch. They would tell about the kiss in the street in Genoa, about the wedding in Virginia City, about 3 children and then grandchildren and then great-grandchildren, all descended from a moment of grace when one man looked down and saw a scrap of blue fabric in the snow and decided to stop. Why did he stop? The youngest children would ask. How did he even see it? And the answer was always the same, because he was meant to. Because love sometimes starts in the most unexpected places. Because your great-great-grandfather Cole was the kind of man who paid attention, who cared enough to notice when something wasn't quite right. And your great-great-grandmother Sarah was the kind of woman worth digging through 3 feet of snow to save. They found each other when she most needed finding, and they held onto each other for the rest of their lives. That's what real love looks like. The story never got old. Each generation found new meaning in it, new inspiration. Young couples on the verge of giving up would remember that Cole and Sarah had barely known each other when they decided to build a life together, and they would choose to stay and work things out. Parents exhausted by the demands of raising children would remember Cole sitting up all night to keep Sarah alive. Sarah teaching Cole to read despite running a household and teaching school, and they would find the energy to keep going. Elderly couples facing the end of one partner's life would remember Cole and Sarah's final years together, the quiet devotion and deep companionship, and they would be grateful for every moment. The story became woven into the fabric of the family's identity. They were the descendants of the woman buried in snow and the cowboy who dug her out. They were the inheritors of a love strong enough to survive blizzards and build legacies. They were living proof that sometimes, in the darkest moments when all seems lost, someone comes along and refuses to let you die. Someone stops and digs and stays and warms you back to life. And if you're very lucky, that someone becomes your forever. So the story lived on, passed down through generations, embroidered and embellished but always true at its core. And every time it was told, whoever was listening would feel a little bit braver, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more willing to believe that love like that really existed, really endured, really mattered. Because it did. Because Cole and Sarah had proven it. Because their love story, born in the Wild West of 1867, had lasted not just their lifetimes but generations beyond, touching lives they would never meet, inspiring hearts they would never know. And somewhere in the vast mystery of eternity, Cole and Sarah were together still, their souls as intertwined in death as their lives had been in life, their love story continuing in ways the living could only imagine but never doubt. That was their gift to the world. That was their legacy. Not just children or businesses or buildings, though those mattered too, but the absolute, unwavering proof that love conquers all, that miracles happen, that sometimes when you're buried and dying and lost in the cold, someone comes along who sees you, saves you, and loves you forever. And that, in the end, is all anyone could ever hope for.